A long-running dispute between the Indian government and Twitter escalated on Thursday when police in northern Uttar Pradesh state summoned Twitter India's chief for questioning. They allege Twitter encouraged the spread of, quote, hate and enmity by failing to remove a video being circulated on the platform. These are still images from that video which shows several men beating an elderly Muslim man and cutting off his beard. The man later said he was attacked because of his faith and that the men forced him to chant a religious Hindu slogan. Police have disputed the claims, dismissing the violent attack as personal. The video went viral with several journalists retweeting it. But the story is naturally more complicated than that. To help us break it down, let us bring in DW correspondent Nimisha Jaiswal in Delhi. Nimisha, why is Twitter in the dock for a video that went viral on that platform?
Well, Paresh, the police says that Twitter allowed for a video that could incite communal differences or disharmony to be propagated and to go viral on its platform, that it allowed for people who were tweeting out this video with information saying that this had a communal angle to stay online. Now, normally, Twitter and other platforms like it, like social media platforms, would be protected under protections for intermediaries. Basically, if a third party is posting on your platform, you are not responsible for that content. However, some new rules that the Indian government has instated in the end of May may be why Twitter is running amok on this front. The government is seeing Twitter as violating these rules. However, the last call on if these intermediary protections apply or not to Twitter will be made in the courts. The government alone cannot decide if Twitter is no longer protected.
So just tell us a bit more about these intermediary protections. What is the protection that social media platforms like Twitter get with these so-called intermediary protections?
Well, basically, Baresh, any third-party platform, any social media platform is not held responsible for either inflammatory or contentious content that is published on it by somebody else. However, it is also important for each of these platforms to comply with the local rules of a government. The Indian government instated some new rules in the end of May. Some of the requirements for this, for example, are for each social media platform to introduce grievance officers so that the government or the courts can reach out to these officers if they find some content to be violative. When these rules were first released, Twitter expressed concerns that this may violate free speech. However, its failure to comply with setting up this officer in place is seen as the reason why it may be running into trouble. Twitter, however, insists now that it is keeping the government updated and intends to comply with the laws of the land.
I'm just wondering if other social media companies have complied with these directives as part of these new rules, or is it only Twitter that is being potentially targeted by the government?
Well, Facebook and Google have complied. WhatsApp has also come around. WhatsApp did contend these rules on another front, which was to protect its end-to-end encryption, because one of the other asks of this rule is to allow traceability. WhatsApp is fighting that, but they have now instituted a grievance officer like the government calls for this month itself. The government has also alleged that Twitter practices double standards, that it has marked some posts as manipulated media, most inflammatorily for the government, posts by BJP ministers themselves, while it allows for other posts to go on the platform without being challenged. And the government says that it cannot do so and also flout the laws of the land.
Is the government attempting to control social media in India?
Well, there are definitely concerns around this that many critics and internet freedom activists have pointed out. There have been past instances of the government asking Twitter to take down information or posts that are critical, for example, of its handling of the pandemic. The Indian government, on the other hand, thinks that Twitter is practicing double standards. It pointed out how Twitter responded to posts about the Capitol riots in America very differently to how it responded to violence on India's Republic Day in January. When the Indian government asked it to take down these posts, Twitter failed to comply. So there's a divide in this conversation. There are concerns that if platforms like Twitter get dragged to the court every time something controversial comes up on their platforms, they may start self-policing, which will essentially curb the freedom of expression of its users.
A complex and layered issue, but thank you so much for explaining that to us. Nimisha Jaiswal in Delhi.